What if, beneath the gentle aura of your sensitivity, there lives something ancient, something that feeds not only on your compassion, but on your very sense of self? We are told to celebrate empathy, to wear it like a badge, to see it as light. But few ever speak of the shadows it quietly carries. Because empathy, when unconscious, is not kindness. It's not healing. It's an open door. A door through which pain, trauma, and the unresolved wounds of others walk right in and make a home in you. Carl Jung once warned us that the unconscious is not simply darkness. It is alive. And when you are unaware, it doesn't just influence you, it possesses you. And the empath, so open, so unguarded, becomes the perfect vessel for energies not their own. You feel something heavy. It's grief, sorrow, rage. But you can't trace its origin. It enters without knocking and lives without permission. You believe it's yours. You carry it. You weep it. But it was never yours to begin with. What if the pain you carry was never meant for you? What if your soul has become a graveyard for what others have refused to bury? This is not empathy. This is entanglement. And when you do not know the difference, you lose yourself. Redefining the empath. Most people think an empath is just someone who feels deeply, someone tender-hearted, emotionally available, gentle. But that image is far too soft to carry the truth. An empath isn't just someone who cries during sad movies or senses the mood of a room. No, the true empath is something else entirely, something far more mysterious and far more dangerous. The true empath is not merely emotional. They are psychic. They are a conduit, a channel, a vessel. Through them, the unconscious of others moves without warning and often without mercy. They are not a sponge. They are a lightning rod, a living instrument through which sorrow, trauma, rage, and ancestral memory find a passage into this world. And while the world romanticizes their gift, the truth is, it's not always a blessing. Sometimes it is a burden. Sometimes it is possession. Carl Jung warned us in symbols, in dreams, in silence, that the unconscious does not always walk softly. It does not always wear horns. Sometimes it wears the smile of someone you desperately want to help. And when your empathy is unconscious, when you have not asked, "Is this mine?" you do not feel. You fuse. You begin to disappear beneath the weight of other people's unlived lives. You carry not only their sadness, but their ancestors' sorrow, their repressed rage, their unspoken shame. This is not empathy. This is energetic collapse. And when left unexamined, it becomes possession. The gift becomes a ghost. The feeler becomes the haunted. The healer becomes the harmed. And so we must redefine what it means to be empathic. It is not softness alone. It is not kindness alone. It is the ability to feel the unseen, to navigate the unsaid, to carry, but not absorb, the sacred weight of the world. True empathy is not weakness. It is psychic strength. It is soul listening. It is spiritual discernment. And it must be conscious, or it will consume you. The psychic sponge. When boundaries collapse, there is a woman. She stands on a bridge suspended above a vast, shadowed chasm. She has no eyes, not because they were taken, but because they were never meant to see outward. Her hands tremble in the air as if both reaching for something and shielding herself from what she cannot name. Below her, the pit groans. Cries rise from the depths. Grief, rage, longing, all echoing without source, without face. She cannot see them, but she feels them. Feels every cry pierce her bones. Every moan press against her skin. Her body becomes the instrument of their sorrow. She shakes. She bleeds. And yet she cannot say where their pain ends and where she begins. This is the empath. Blind not in sight, but in self-awareness. She does not know what she is carrying. She only knows that it hurts. This is what happens when boundaries collapse. When no one taught her to say, "This is not mine." She absorbs everything. Without filter. Without discernment. Like a sponge left in an ocean of human suffering. And the unconscious does not care. It does not ask permission. It does not knock. It is a river with no banks. It floods whoever leaves themselves open. When the empath has no inner structure, no rooted self to return to, they become a playground for every shadow that passes by. The sadness of strangers, the anxiety of crowds, the rage of ancestors, all of it finds them, enters them, lives in them. And because no one ever told them this could happen, they think it's just who they are. They think they are broken, but they are not broken. They are simply unguarded, untrained, ungrounded. To feel deeply is not the danger. To feel without knowing the source, that is where the danger begins. The unconscious doesn't distinguish between what is yours and what is someone else's. It only speaks one language, sensation. And so, the empath feels but never asks. This is why discernment is not optional. It is essential. Without it, the empath is no longer a helper. They become a haunted house for emotions that do not belong to them. And the worst part? No one sees it. On the outside, they look calm, kind, collected. But inside, they are drowning. The world praises their empathy while never noticing the quiet collapse behind their eyes. To be empathic is not to feel everything. It is to know what you feel and to know when it is not yours. Shadow seduction. When helping becomes harm. Sometimes the empath falls in love with the wounded. Not because the soul truly calls for it, but because the wound feels familiar. There is a strange seduction in pain that mirrors our own. It whispers, "You are the one who can fix this. You are the one who understands." But this is not love. This is shadow attraction. The empath does not fall for the person. They fall for the ache. The ache says, if you heal them, maybe you'll finally be enough. And so they stay. Even when it hurts. Even when the love bleeds. The archetype of the wounded healer begins to rise. Chiron, the ancient symbol of one who cannot heal their own wound but lives to heal others. It is noble. It is beautiful. But it is also dangerous. Because when helping becomes your identity, you forget who you are when no one needs saving. You begin to measure your worth by how broken someone else is. You offer your soul not from love, but from fear. The fear that without being needed, you'll be forgotten. And so empathy becomes a mask. A sacred word worn to hide something unspoken. Sometimes empathy is not compassion. It is control in disguise. Sometimes the desire to help is not to heal, but to avoid your own silence. Ask yourself, do you help because it heals them, or because it makes you feel necessary? We must be honest here. Deeply honest. Even empathy can be a form of self-abandonment. When your care for others becomes a reason to leave yourself behind, that is not love. That is forgetting. You become the rescuer, the saint, the silent martyr. And slowly, invisibly, the self disappears. You believe you're carrying others. But what you're really doing is escaping yourself. The unconscious is clever. It uses good intentions to bypass your deepest fears. It turns helping into hiding. It turns healing into performance. But there is a cost. There is always a cost. Archetypal possession. The invisible puppeteer. There comes a moment when the empath is no longer just feeling. They are being moved. Moved not by choice, not by conscious intention, but by forces older than their name. They become the savior, the martyr, the eternal rescuer. But these are not roles. They are archetypes. Living patterns that exist within the fabric of the human psyche. Jung did not call them metaphors. He called them realities of the soul. And when you are unconscious of these forces, they do not disappear. They possess. They enter through compassion. They animate you through longing. They whisper, you must save them, or you have no purpose. There was a man who had a dream. He found himself inside a cathedral made entirely of mirrors. As he walked, each step echoed with unfamiliar voices. Not his, but hauntingly close. He turned to one mirror and saw a weeping child. Another showed a screaming soldier. Another, a mother fading into ash. He began to scream, which one is me? But the mirrors did not answer. They only reflected. This is the empath, lost in the reflections of others' pain. Unable to remember the face they had before they began to carry so many. When archetypal possession takes over, you don't know you're performing. You believe it's who you are. You say, I'm a helper. But the truth is, something else is helping itself to your life. These patterns, they are not just concepts. They are currents in the river of the psyche. The savior wants to be needed. The martyr needs to suffer. The rescuer fears what will happen if they step back. And when these archetypes possess the empath, they become a mirror not of truth, but of burden. You begin to feel what isn't yours. You begin to speak what isn't yours. And slowly, you forget how to speak your own name. The deeper danger isn't the pain you absorb, it's the self you lose in the process. To reclaim yourself is not a gentle task. It is the sacred violence of self-remembrance. You must learn to say, that is not mine. Even when it cries like a child. Even when it begs to be saved. Because to say yes to every shadow is to say no to your own soul. And the soul, your soul, was not born to be a mirror for everyone else's pain. The ancestral trap. When pain isn't yours. There was a woman who cried every time she walked into my office. Not just once. Every session. The tears came before the words, like a river with no beginning. She thought it was about her childhood, her father's absence, her mother's coldness, her lover's betrayal. And yes, there was pain there, but it wasn't the root. As we descended deeper, the truth emerged. Not as a scream, but as a whisper. Her tears were not hers. Not entirely. They belonged to her mother. And her mother's sorrow? That belonged to her mother before her. And the one before that. Generations of women who had never been allowed to weep had found a vessel in her. She carried the sorrow of a lineage. She became the chalice for grief that had never been named. And she thought it was hers. The empath often becomes the final stop in the river of ancestral pain. Because they feel deeply. Because they are porous. Because no one taught them how to close the gate. So I ask you, are your tears yours? Or are they inherited? That ache in your chest, could it be your grandmother's grief, passed down through silence and shame? That guilt that haunts you, could it be the echo of a secret that was never spoken in your family line? The empath absorbs what others avoid, and sometimes what they avoid is buried across centuries. But just because you feel it, doesn't mean it's yours to carry. There is sacred work in naming the sorrow, in saying, this grief is real, but it is not mine. This is not abandonment. This is liberation. Because when you try to heal what others refuse to face, you become trapped in their shadows. And your light dims, not because you're broken, but because you were never meant to carry 1,000 candles. You are not the graveyard of your family's ghosts. You are the living threshold, the one who chooses what ends with you, the one who dares to break the cycle by feeling with awareness. The tears may still come, but they will come clean. They will no longer be cries of confusion, but songs of release. And in that, the empath becomes not a sponge for sorrow, but a purifier of legacy. The sacred art of discernment. The empath is not weak. Let us begin there. Let us burn that illusion down. Sensitivity is not fragility. It is power in its raw, unrefined state. But power, when unconscious, becomes chaos. The empath who feels everything without knowing where it enters is not awakened. They are hijacked. And so the sacred task begins to feel with awareness. To say clearly, I feel you, but I do not become you. I witness your wound, but I do not house it within my psyche. This is not coldness. This is compassion with a spine. Boundaries are not walls. They are not rigid barricades built in fear. Boundaries are vessels. They give form to the sacred. A cup without shape cannot carry water. A soul without boundary cannot carry empathy. Without form, we leak. Without discernment, we drown. The empath must not become an ocean of others. They must become a river with banks. A conscious empath does not say yes to every wound. They choose. They listen. They discern. They no longer confuse entanglement with love. They no longer confuse absorption with compassion. They remain present, but rooted in self. They feel the ache in others, but do not cradle it like a child that belongs to them. And when the wave comes, the grief, the rage, the sorrow, they breathe. They do not resist it, nor do they become it. This is the sacred art of discernment. To love without fusing, to care without controlling, to feel without forgetting who you are. This is not detachment. It is devotion. Devotion to truth. For in truth, we see clearly. In truth, we love fully. In truth, we stop confusing self-sacrifice for sacred service. Some pain is meant to die, not to be healed. There is a forest older than memory, where roots twist like the stories we inherit, and silence speaks louder than prayer. In its heart sits a stone well, bottomless, black, eternal. Around it gather the empaths, hands over hearts, eyes full of sorrow they do not fully understand. One by one, they pour their tears into its mouth, hoping to lift the shadows that haunt those they love. They believe if they feel deeply enough, care fully enough, weep long enough, they can bring light to the darkness below. But the well has no bottom, and tears do not heal what is not ready. They feed it. This is the cruel truth. Not all pain seeks to be redeemed. Some wounds are not looking for healing. They are seeking extinction. There are people, perhaps those you love most, whose suffering is not an invitation but a fortress. And you, dear empath, were never meant to lay siege to a soul that has chosen to remain closed. You were never asked to sacrifice your life in exchange for someone else's refusal to awaken. Your empathy, when unconscious, becomes entanglement. You become the savior, the martyr, the caretaker of pain that does not belong to you and never asked to be saved. And worse, you begin to believe that this is love. Ask yourself, is your empathy liberating, or is it binding you? Is your care allowing another to rise, or giving them a place to remain broken forever? Do you hold space, or do you hold people hostage with your concern? This is not a condemnation. It is a call to discernment. Empathy is sacred, but sacredness requires wisdom. Not every cry is a call for rescue. Some are echoes from lives that refuse to change. Not every shadow wishes to be seen. Some are content to sleep. And some suffering must be laid to rest, not brought into the light. You are not heartless for letting pain go. You are wise. You are not cruel for refusing to be consumed. You are learning to survive. Some pain was never meant to be your responsibility. Some healing must be done by the soul who owns the wound, not the one who feels it. This is not abandonment. This is sacred detachment. For if you do not choose this, you will spend your life weeping into a well that never returns the light. From martyr to mirror, the path of the conscious empath, the shift begins quietly, not with fireworks or proclamations, but with a whisper, deep within the soul of the empath. A moment arrives when they no longer rush to fix the brokenness in the room. They no longer feel the pull to gather every sorrow like scattered feathers on the wind. Something changes, not in the world, but in the way they relate to the world. They stop scanning for wounds to heal. They begin to understand. Their role is not to absorb pain, but to witness it without losing themselves. The empath becomes a mirror, not the kind that reflects back wounds, but the kind that reflects back potential. They become a sanctuary, not through sacrifice, but through sovereignty. And this is the holy transition, from martyr to mirror. For years, perhaps lifetimes, they believed their worth was found in how much pain they could carry. But healing does not demand martyrdom. It demands truth. And truth begins with the self. This is where Carl Jung's great work, The Path of Individuation, calls them forward. Individuation is not selfishness. It is the sacred act of becoming whole, not fragmented by others, but rooted in oneself. When the empath walks this path, they realize, I am not here to rescue. I am here to remind. I am not a savior. I am a signal. I reflect your light back to you, not your wounds. And so they ask with a trembling but awakened voice, who was I before the world told me to feel for others first? Who would I be if I didn't carry your sorrow? What if my presence was more powerful than my sacrifice? The conscious empath begins to crave clarity more than connection. They no longer fall in love with those who need saving. They seek those who can see them. They stop performing compassion as a way to feel worthy. Instead, they learn the sacred art of simply being. With themselves, with others, with the silence. The conscious empath no longer walks into a room searching for pain. They walk into a room as a mirror, polished by their own shadow work, grounded by their own becoming. And those who gaze into them do not see a savior. They see what they have forgotten of their own soul. This is the destiny of the awakened empath. Not to bleed for others, but to become the sacred threshold through which others remember who they truly are. You are not a sponge. You were never meant to soak in the pain of the world until you forget your own shape. You are not a martyr. Your soul was not born to bleed quietly at the feet of everyone else's unspoken wounds. You are a vessel, formed not of fragility but of sacred alchemy. You are here to transform, not by taking on suffering but by transmuting its meaning through awareness. True empathy is not the act of drowning with the drowning. It is not the absorption of pain, but the stillness that witnesses it without collapsing. It is clarity, presence, transformation. The awakened empath is not burned by others' suffering. They have become fire themselves. A fire with a center, fire that warms without consuming. They have stopped resisting their sovereignty. And from that place, they whisper to the storm. I feel you, she says, voice steady as mountain roots. But I am not you. And the storm begins to still, not because she absorbed it, but because she finally remembered herself. If this touched something deep in you, don't rush past it. Sit with it. Reflect. Let it echo through the caves of your own psyche. And if you feel called, share your story in the comments below. Subscribe for more content like this, because your sensitivity is not a weakness. It's a sacred invitation, a call to awaken, to come home to yourself,